You're on FBI Radio, listening right now to a special program called Sonic Dialog. You may have tuned into our last episode. If not, you're with me, Lindsay Riley, from FBI Radio, joined with Raul Campos from KCRW, and we're having a nice chat, exchanging some music across Oz and the US. Raul, how's it going today?
Everything is cool, man. It's a little warm over here. You know, summer just never ends in LA. Everybody always says like, oh, LA, you guys don't have seasons, you know. But we're going to talk about music across the US and from Australia, and just really kind of this marriage and these parallels and the likes and styles and vibes. And really, it's talking about music, right?
Hell yeah. And last episode, we covered hip hop. This episode, covering rock, which I'm excited to, see the differences, but also some of the similarities between the scene here and the scene over there. So excited.
All right. Well, how are we going to start off this episode, sir?
Maybe we'll go something from Sydney, I feel like, to start off. A band called Carnations. So they've been around for a few years here in Sydney. There's kind of like a scene in Sydney that is kind of taking influence from like post-punk, art punk, those sort of scenes from like the 80s and 90s, those sort of like 4AD, maybe London scenes as well. They kind of all are from or like make music with like the sort of like art school in Sydney. I feel like that's where a lot of the bands are from. But quite a good like community ethos, quite a DIY ethos. They kind of release music independently. Lots of members play in different bands all across Sydney. Often they will like go a few years without releasing any music, build the word of mouth by playing shows, just like being cool and mysterious. And this is one of the bigger bands from this sort of, from this scene. They're called Carnations. They apparently have a record coming out later this year, although I'm actually not sure because I've heard a few things here and there about whether it's coming out. Not sure, but they have released an EP.
So would this be the debut full length?
It would be the debut
album?
full length, yeah. But they did release an EP last year, which was their debut music release in general. Really strong release. Has a song on it called "I Die," which might be the song we listened to in this episode. Really cool, sweet, sort of like melodic two vocalists singing together, and really tight instrumentation backing it up as well. Just a really solid, great Sydney band, kind of Cure adjacent. Some songs are a bit lighter, some songs a bit darker. Great Sydney band. Keen for you to check it out.
All right, let's do it. The song's called "I Die" right now as we kick off this edition of Sonic Dialog.
Time, what can I believe when I see eye to eye?
Back on Sonic Dialog, my name is Lindsay from FBI with Raul from KCRW. Checking out some Sydney music right now. Sydney band Carnations with a track called I Die. Raul, thoughts?
You can hear that kind of post-punk influence, but also you mentioned The Cure. I'm hearing some shoegaze, and just I'm a massive fan of just this really straightforward, new rock music. And again, it's a fusion. It's kind of on the shoulders of greatness, where you're taking all these influences from bands that have been doing it for decades, and you can hear those inspirations. And it's good stuff, man. Good stuff. Carnations. I love the name too for the band, how original.
There's a lot of great sort of band names in this little scene. There's a band called Optic Nerve, a really good band name. What are some other names? Daily Toll is another really good band name.
Okay.
Trying to think of some other names. There's a band called RMFC, which stands for Rock Music Fan Club. I feel like Sydney's got the names, the rock band names, like really down pat. I feel like we do that really well.
I dig it, man. I totally dig it. I mean, we're going to get into a track by the group Patio. So, but again, they're coming out of New York, and it's also this kind of like mellow indie rock with those post-punk influences, and coming out of New York. But I think these days they're splitting their time between like LA, New York, and even spending time in Berlin. So, if I'm curious to see what that German influence is going to put into maybe their upcoming releases. But yeah, straightforward, just kind of really cool stuff. This song's called Gold 2. So I can't wait for you to check out this one as we continue with Sonic Dialog right now on FBI Radio.
Let's do it.
Close behind, stay inside, look alive, another night, silent days, ancient pain, comfort in autonomy. Broke my heart for fashion, passed through error, still seeking truth. Believe my own lies, used up my whole supply. Silent days, ancient pain. Comfort is complacency.
Excited to be on the airwaves of FBI, joined here by Lindsay. Man, I really want to know, like, when you see and hear two artists that are on complete different sides of the globe, and then you hear the similarities, I want to hear your thoughts on when you go like, oh, this could easily be a Sydney band or an Australian band. And likewise, I can say like, oh yeah, I can totally hear one of your bands being from New York or LA, and in that scene that's kind of bubbling where you got to be in the know, and you got to be following the bands to know where the shows are happening and to really be involved and as fans of such artists, right?
Totally. I mean, like you said before, so many of these bands are standing on the shoulders of giants, like I think like musicians that make rock music nowadays, they're really in touch with like the very influential or deep diving on like these artists and bands that have really like created the fabric of rock music over the last 30 years. And they're all pulling influences from similar bands in a way that's really interesting and cool. So yeah, that's probably where a lot of that similarity comes from. This band from New York, is that correct? Patio?
Yeah, they're from New York, but I think they're splitting their time now into different areas. They're between LA and Berlin and different parts of the world. So
Totally.
It's interesting, and I can't wait to, like I said, see what's gonna happen. And even like in New York, they're from Brooklyn, which is also like just massive right now when it comes to all the different styles of music. It's considered like there's Williamsburg, there's South Slope, there's Park Slope, and all these areas in Brooklyn. Forget about it being like a different borough, it's one of the boroughs in New York. But then within the borough and within the different scenes. You're getting all these different, kind of like hipster vibes, if you will. So you can have like the fun kind of new disco electronic scene. You can have the very classic kind of New York and, really underground scene, or whether it's house or garage by all the legends. But now you have this cool kind of rock scene bubbling out of Brooklyn. And that's what's really cool to see. And it's definitely an area because, in New York, you're not as sprawled as you are in LA. Everybody's on top of each other. So to be able to kind of separate yourself from all the different sounds and what everybody else is doing, kudos to the band Patio. I mean, really, that's what it's about.
Yeah. Speaking of New York, like a New York band that sprang to mind when I heard that song was ESG. I feel like it's a big ESG influence on that song for sure. Legendary Bronx band.
Yeah. And I mean, you can even hear the influences, like you were saying, and paying homage and really paying attention to what these iconic bands back in the day did. I mean, you're hearing even like the CBGB vibe, where, all these legendary artists that came through the punk scene, but then into the post-punk scene, and then you get into this kind of more mellow kind of indie rock where things just start to evolve and maybe get a little bit prettier, maybe a little bit softer, but there's a little bit of everything for everybody.
Awesome. Yeah. Speaking of which, the next song from the next band from Sydney that I'm going to show to you, Raul, Shady Nasty. I feel like talking to a lot of like really fans of music in Sydney that are really obsessed with Sydney music. If you ask them distinctive Sydney bands, I feel like this is a band that would come up quite a lot. There isn't really much like them. They have a very sort of distinct visual identity, sound as well. It's rock music, but pulling from a lot of different influences. When I first encountered them, which is maybe 5-6 years ago, I saw them live without hearing any of their music. And live, they really remind me of Death Grips, like seeing Death Grips live, like really industrial, heavy lyrics that were kind of shouted in a way that it sort of resembles hip hop.
Right.
But then their recorded music has this kind of real interesting mellowness to it as well. Lyrically, it's really interesting. It's kind of like there's a sort of tongue-in-cheekness in the way that it kind of is like, it's very in your face, but it seems very subtly or like cheekily kind of pulling apart these tropes of masculinity in terms of like, gym culture or car culture or like sort of macho aggressiveness, which like probably comes out in the title of the song that we're going to hear, which is called Hard Style, and the title of the band, which is Shady Nasty. Very sort of like, what does it mean? Cheeky, sort of dig at those things, I feel like. But a very cult Sydney band, and their shows get pretty wild, I would say that as well. They have some very passionate fans for sure. So keen for you to hear it.
I can't wait either. Let's do it.
This is Hard Style by Shady Nasty, Sydney band. You're on Sonic Dialog right now.
push my credits roll. This shit reminds me it's for my eyes only, my life only. I swear I heard applause when I hit the floor, trying to take another breath, back up on the wall, sweating bullets in the morning. And I've walked around enough not to forget 2194, be the home, be the best. You can smell it on my breath, you can see it on my chest. Got to be. Got to be. Got to be hard style, dry style, hostile. I run my life in miles. That's a lot, maybe not. Got to be hard style, my style, hostile. I run my life in miles. That's a lot, maybe not. Got to be. Got to be. Got to be hard style, my style, hostile. I run my life in miles. That's a lot. Maybe not.
You're on Sonic Dialog right now, sharing music between here in Sydney and overseas in the States. My name's Lindsay Riley from FBI with Raul Campos from KCRW. And we just heard Hardstyle by Shady Nasty. Raul, thoughts?
Well, I like that it's kind of like almost spoken word before it really gets into the big, heavier kind of in your face, but it does have that slower tempo. So yeah, you mentioned the hip hop element that's coming in, and you know, I'm hearing the influences of like a band like Yard Act or even Fontaines DC a little bit, you know, where it's in your face. It could be a little bit slower, but there's that still that kind of cool melodic vibe to it that it's kind of underlying and it still kind of drives it. It's cool, man. Really dig it.
Awesome. Yeah. I feel like, again, like we have a few of these bands in Sydney that they've been around for quite a while. Really well loved by the people that know them, but maybe not like massive outside of that. But I think they're kind of comfortable in that as well. Like they seem like a band that are just really comfortable doing their own strange little thing. And yeah, finding, I guess, like satisfaction from that, which I respect.
Well, then I got something for you right now. All right. So the band is called Truth Club. Okay. They're a 4-piece fronted by Travis Harrington, and they're coming out of North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina. And it's when I first heard of this band, I would have never guessed they're from Raleigh. You know, again, I'm hearing the New York influence, again, that kind of like even the punk influence from back in the day. But it's definitely with a little bit harder, but also keeping that fun element to it, which is kind of like, you know, everybody thinks of like punk and, you know, this harder as kind of like, you know, it's just kind of angry music, but it's not. You know, these guys are having fun, even with their videos and their cartoons, and it's cool stuff. And the song that we're going to check out, It's Time, and I really want you to hear, and I want to hear what you think the similarities are when we come back. All right, Truth Club is the artist, the 4-piece, and the song It's Time. What did you think?
Love it. Gotta say, like, yeah, we're fans of these guys. I think we put one of their songs from from this record or from their latest record on rotation
Oh, wow.
this year.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, like you said, like a lot of different influences, definitely like the indie music of like the early 2000s as well. But also like the kind of maybe not as heavily borrowing from that world, but also like slightly borrowing from the world of shoegaze and that sort of noisy side of things as well.
A little bit. Yeah.
But yeah, like really heartfelt in a way. I think that's what really cuts through to it as well. Like you said, like it's not too heavy, but great band.
I think they're definitely being a little cheeky as well.
For sure.
So what do we got coming up next on your end?
So look, again, really hard to pick just 3 tracks. Wanted to represent though something, and not to get too ahead of the gate, but I think it'll really line up well with your last track as well. But this is a band that kind of represents something really exciting happening, not just in Sydney, but across like the East Coast of Australia right now. A really kind of cool, again, DIY independent like music scene, bunch of young musicians and young bands making really exciting, noisy rock music, really influenced by hardcore, post-hardcore, emo, shoegaze, those sort of noisy genres of the late 80s and 90s. This band in particular, Doris, so their members are originally from Maitland, which is a regional town in New South Wales in Australia, and also Newcastle. They're now based in Sydney, but them, along with a few other sort of regional bands in Australia, a few regional towns in New South Wales, some bands up north in Queensland, one in like the Blue Mouse in New South Wales. A fair few of them have made this real sort of interesting sort of ecosystem of noisy, kids making noisy guitar music, made their own record labels, releasing music on each other's labels, playing shows together, doing East Coast tours together, singing vocals together in each other's songs, in each other's shows. This band in particular, Doris, I think the band that have really captured the heart of like young people in Sydney the most. So it's really ponderous, emotional, loud, cathartic emo music. Screamo adjacent. There's definitely screamo in it, but a bit of like post-rock influence as well, a bit of like slint post-rock, and really heavy guitars as well, noisy guitars. This song, Holster, this is kind of like the second last track on their debut album from this year. Very cathartic, climactic, crescendoing track. It's usually the show that they close, the song that they finish their live shows with.
Wow, you're really building this one up, man. It's the finale. It's their encore track.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's a great song. So
bring it on.
Let's do it. You're on Sonic Dialogues. This is Doris, Sydney band, with a track called Holster.
The night that I said yes, you held my hand. It was perfect. I read my script, every word. I got all the way through it. And you listened. And if I told you that this time it was different, would you have listened again and again? The stars went out. Not that night. The last thought that I had. The night that I said yes, you had told me that it felt different. I didn't realize it could be any different, but I came out to you that night, not on purpose, but you took it that way. And if you opened the door and stuck your head in one more time and said I love you, I think this time I would say it back. After glass number 2, I would say it back. In my dreams, you hold a holster over me. You stove that's grown cold. I'll never learn how to cook for two. And like a door that's fallen off its hinge and lost its screws, I'll stand there and I'll hold myself upright. I'll watch you walk through and I'll watch you leave again. It's your choice if you want me to stand there by your side, but I promise you that if you said it again, I'd listen intently.
Bringing you right now, Sonic Dialog. My name is Lindsay Riley with Raul Campos from KCRW, and we're having a listen to Doris. If you're an FBI listener, I'm sure you've heard of them. Raul, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that track, Holster by Sydney band Doris.
Man, I was a little confused with the way the song started. Okay, it was really kind of a little more melodic, softer with the guitar, and then it just freaking takes off like a rocket. There's screaming, distortion, it goes up, it comes back down, it goes up again. I can see how this is a massive, massive crowd pleaser at the end of a show, just a kind of big hoorah at the end to just be the amazing closer of a track. Even the way the song ends with that strong, just kind of like fuzz ending. Phenomenal track.
Yeah, I'm really excited that you enjoyed it. I feel like it's really interesting seeing all these young bands in, there's like a really long history of it in the US, but yeah, in Australia, these young bands here really resurrecting the emo music of emo and screamo and hardcore music of the 90s. It's really cool to see.
Oh man, it's funny you bring that up because I'm a partner at a little bar that we've converted into a vinyl bar in Hollywood called LP Vinyl Bar, but it's across the street from a legendary nightclub that's known for house music, trance, progressive dance music, Avalon, and you name it. Any of the globetrotting DJs have played in there. It's a plus 2,000 capacity room, multiple rooms throughout it, but the main room is just massive. And the weird thing is now on Friday nights, they do an emo night. And that scene is just bubbling. I mean, and it's good to see that it's also happening over there as well. Has this been growing for a while, or is this something kind of new?
It's something that I think has really taken off in the last few years, I feel like. And it's still in its infancy for sure. I think it's going to be even bigger in a few years. But Australia is kind of a hard country to kind of, if you're an underground band or artist, it's hard to build these sort of things. I feel like in America, you have the venues, you have the history of labels, of like, there's more of like a history to that music. Here, like,
right,
there's less so of that. But what's really interesting is that a few of the members of this band, Doris, but also some other bands in the scene adjacent, are really interested in kind of like archiving old emo bands in Australia. It's actually work that they do on the side. Making these a few of them are making these projects online, kind of documenting old shows or old out of print music from like old heavy guitar music or emo bands in Australia. So it's all just like, it's a real, I don't know, it's like warm and fuzzy sort of like real intentional like vibes around it, which is it's great.
It's kind of like what the Deadheads do over here. With old shows and stuff, and just archives and bootlegs of bootlegs of bootlegs, and just kind of bringing it and keeping that scene alive, which is cool. But, like I mentioned, Avalon's a massive club, and to fill it, you really got to be bringing it. And it's cool to see the long line that goes around the building, around the block over here in the heart of Hollywood. And, a lot of people say, well, Hollywood's kind of like a different animal these days. You don't have that many like big clubs. It's all about the more kind of smaller venues, the more intimate clubs. But to be able to rock an emo night on a Friday in the heart of Hollywood at this mega club, it's something really cool to see. So I'm glad that scene's bubbling. And so then, all right, we're gonna stick around in North Carolina, but we're going to the west coast of the state. It's to Asheville, North Carolina, and I want to kind of bring something that's kind of similar, where it has these dynamics, where we've been kind of trained on the traditional kind of arrangement of a song where, okay, it goes verse, chorus, maybe a bridge, back to, and then it's over, right? In kind of the typical kind of formula of a pop song. But just like with Doris, I'm going to bring you this band called Wednesday. And it also part of the band is MJ Linderman, who is now having massive success. We're playing his solo music quite a bit on KCRW. But this song has those kind of crescendos as well. It goes up, it comes down. It just takes you on this really kind of cool journey. And just like Truth Club, they're also very involved with their look, with their videos, and their kind of persona. And I definitely recommend you to, if you're a fan of like scary movies, and definitely check out the video. The video is out there. But this song that we're gonna check out is called Bull Believer right now, by the band Wednesday, based out of North Carolina as well, but a little more west in Asheville. And this song is called Bull Believer, as we do close out this episode of Sonic Dialog right now on FBI Radio.
Got 'em right between the shoulders, and the bull loses blood. No fight left to give. Can't pull his head up.
excited to be part of Sonic Dialog, joining the team over at FBI. Lindsay, I gotta ask you, did that come close to Doris?
I gotta say, like, we're big fans of this band here. They're actually quite big in Australia. You'll be surprised, maybe. They toured here early this year, so they did a show with Wednesday.
Cool. Then I got it right. I got it right at least. You know,
Wednesday and MJ Lenderman. They did a double show, like back to back. Like MJ Lenderman opened for Wednesday. And it was really interesting. I was chatting to, I think, either the promoter or someone adjacent to it, and they were like, they told me afterwards, like, the band was so shocked with how many people were there and how everyone knew all the words. And yeah, I think that's
amazing.
Potentially because we have this similar sort of scene brewing here, that sort of really noisy, cathartic, crescendoing music is like really cutting through, I think, especially with young people. And I mean, that track in particular, like, that's one of the best tracks from last year, I feel like. Just an absolute opus of a track. Like, it just builds and builds and releases with such energy.
That's why when I heard the Doris track, I'm all like, oh yeah, this is all Wednesday right here. You know, and it's a trip because when you have this crazy strong rock music, and then MJ Lenderman goes on this solo tip, and he goes like more kind of alt country, you know, it's kind of, again, it takes us back to the different influences, the different styles. And really, it's all about just making good music, you know, whatever style it may be. You know, there's a fan base for it across the world. You know, that's the beauty of what we're trying to achieve here on the Sonic Dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the country influence in Wednesday especially is just like adds that extra little element of something different as well, to distinguish them from all the other noisy bands. There's a band in Adelaide in Australia. They have a debut record coming out in December that you and your listeners should check out. They're called Twine. Similar sort of noise and country influence. I think they could be a really big band. There's one to keep in your radar.
I've heard the single. I think I've heard a single already from Twine that was passed over here. Yeah. No, that's cool stuff. And about a year ago, I went to Australia and I visited all the different areas. Obviously went into FBI, went into Sydney, went into Melbourne, went into Adelaide. We went to go watch a footy game. So that was a whole lot of fun. And I even went down to Hobart and I played at Mona, which was also a trip. But all these different musical influences, because they had me play, and, you know, I'm kind of bringing my kind of beatsy, new disco-y kind of vibe. And they go like, oh, play whatever you want. You know, it's the crowd is very responsive to it, everything and anything. And I'm all like, all right, cool. And I saw people, you know, the heads were bobbing and people were having a good time. And then the band that came on right after me was this hardcore punk trio. And they were totally into that as well. I'm all like, all right, that's what it's about, you know, where I can never judge a book by its cover, you know, and when you see somebody dancing or enjoying one kind of music, you're never going to know what kind of other styles that they're into. So I love seeing this kind of mesh of people just enjoying different styles, making different styles of music, having different influences, whether it's rock, country, or hip hop, or, you know, legendary punk bands that come into play. I mean, that's really what the music's all about.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That probably is going to wrap us up today for this episode of Sonic Dialogue. Big thank you to the US Embassy for making this happen. Big thanks to our producer, Adam Burke. Also, Erin and Sarah on the production duties, making everything run nice and smoothly. We'll catch you on the next episode. Raul, have a great rest of your week. I'll see you soon.
Enjoy the day. Catch you later, Lindsay.